Hi there, everybody. This is Jim at Facilis Technology. Hope everyone can see and hear me clearly. Waiting for a few more people to join in. We have about a third of the people that I think registered, but the nice thing is that you register and you get access to the video after it's complete. So we're going to be sending out a newsletter to all the registered email addresses with the 3 previous videos that we've done, and we'll include this one as well for the next newsletter, as well as the 4 more we have coming up in the next 2 weeks. So looks like we have a good amount of people here, so we can go ahead and I think get started. This is going to be Object Cloud LTO. Object Cloud and Object LTO are 2 parts of the same software feature. Edge Sync is a part of that as well, and that is that's basically taking Object Cloud and using the Object Cloud and Cloud Storage as an intermediary for multi-site synchronization. And so we're going to get a little bit into that and what that is. Now, next week we have an advanced FastTracker webinar, and the week after that we have an advanced Edge Sync webinar that will go over workflows for each of those. So we're not going to get too deep into the workflow aspect of this, sharing projects and media. We'll touch on that, but certainly in the weeks coming, we're going to see a lot more workflow specific and more advanced tips and features for those products. So this is part 4, Object Cloud, LTO, and Edge Sync. So just recap a little bit of what we do, as we do for every one of these webinars, because we may have some people on that weren't on the previous webinars or maybe introduced to us for the first time. We sell shared storage networks, collaborative networks for post-production, content creation, broadcast, anyone who creates content for enriched media for consumption. We handle that rich media, we handle those files and that data flow, and we make it all work. On top of that, we add lots of software. We're a software company, and you'll see a lot of that software incorporated today into these Object Cloud, Object LTO, FastTracker, and Edge Sync feature sets. We won some awards last year for the hub system that incorporated the Object Cloud LTO and FastTracker elements. But Object Cloud and Object LTO and Edge Sync are not included with the base product. They do cost it extra because you're buying cloud storage, you're buying licensing, you're buying things that are over and above the shared storage and asset management system. But you'll see it's all very well integrated into the shared storage and asset management system as well. Excuse me. So getting into a little bit about what makes Facilis unique and different. 3 aspects that I like to go over, 1 or 2 of which we'll be talking about today in some level. First is the shared file system. That's the underlying shared file system, the underlying feature set of every server that we sell. The shared file system enables the proper sharing of media in a collaborative environment among multiple workstations, multiple operating systems, and multiple applications. FastTracker Asset Management is the included asset management system with Facilis Storage. We support lots of asset management products out there and different companies doing different things. We're happy to be partners with a lot of those companies, but we do supply our own as well, which you'll see has some pretty good features and is well integrated into the storage and into Object Cloud and Object LTO. And then we have Object Cloud, Facilis Edge. Object LTO is a part of that. More so recently, we've been talking about Object Cloud and Facilis Edge because of the remote aspect and the remote advantage of having cloud storage. Last year, we sold a lot of LTO systems. This year, we're selling a lot more cloud storage for obvious reasons. So I want to get into a little bit about what's specifically about Object Cloud and Object LTO. We're going to be talking about today is some of the unique features about that. First off, it was built to be an archiving system to the cloud and to LTO tape. So it's a drag and drop archive, drag and drop restore. If you don't have FastTracker incorporated into the network, then it's a simple drag and drop to a cache volume, which I'll explain a little bit about what the cache volume is. And it's the simplest way possible to incorporate archive, backup, and sending to cloud for remote access into your shared storage environment, bar none. There's no additional interface to learn. There's no day in, day out having to flip between different applications to do what you need to do. No sort of synchronization programs, although we can automate synchronization of projects as well. The cache volume itself is a standard Facilis volume, like any other project-based volume that you'd use in production. And that cache volume can be any size you want. It just really needs to be as large as the largest file you're copying, because as soon as you copy files to the cache volume, you can tell it to flush those files from the disk so that it doesn't use up any more space, because it's already been uploaded to the cloud or offloaded to LTO. And it leaves behind a stub file, what we call a stub or a sparse file. Basically, I call it header information. It's the header information of the file that tells you where it is in the folder, and you see folders and files, but there's nothing behind them. There's no essence of the file. There's no video and audio data. So you can still look at them, search them, and if you want to drag them out into a work volume, it'll automatically prefetch or restore or hydrate, whichever term you want to use, into the cache volume and thereby to wherever you're copying it to. So like I said, drag and drop, restore, and archive. Each folder has its own retention rules. So you can tell, excuse me, you can tell it that, you know what, I want to work off the cache volume, which in some of these workflows will be important, because that cache volume is like any other volume in the system. It's a fast shared file system volume with a drive group behind it. It could be gigabytes per second of performance. So you may want to work directly off that cache volume. You do qualify workflows where that's possible to do. And then once you're working off that cache volume, you don't want it to flush. You don't want those to become stub files, because you're actively working on those. So we can set retention rules so that if you want to have a folder that's like a Dropbox, where you're going to just drag something to it, it's going to go to cloud and then wipe away from the disk, you can do that. If you want to have another folder that's active projects, then you just won't flush that ever. You can keep making the cache volume larger if you need to keep up with all the projects you might be using on the cache volume, which thereby are synchronized to the cloud media. So lots of things we can talk about there in different aspects of the interface that show us what that all means. And then the cache mounts to the client desktop, because at the end of all this, unless you're going to LTO, at the end of all this going to cloud, a lot of people are talking about, well, it's on the cloud, it's backed up, and I now want to get access to that from my remote desktop, because that's where people are working these days. So we'll get into sort of how the different ways are to do that. We have good, better, and best. Like a lot of things Facilis do, we don't just give you one way to do something. We give you a way to do it, and then we say, well, if you want to do it better, more efficiently, faster, whatever it might be, more secure in some cases, then we'll show you the different ways to do it. But we'll start you out slow, get your feet wet with it, and see where you go. Now, Facilis Edge is a part of Object Cloud. Facilis Edge takes it to the next level. It licenses the storage differently, and it adds a database on top of it, so that all the storage from various nodes or various instances of the Object Cloud are synchronized together into a single file system. So that cache volume that you have at your facility, that's a Facilis volume, it may consist of multiple cloud buckets that are constantly being synchronized into a single file system from multiple other clients across the remote locations, and they're seeing everybody else's data and the facility's data as well. So that synchronization and all the development that's incorporated to make all that work adds to the license fee and the cost of the storage, unless you use your own storage. We always can use AWS S3, Azure Blob Storage. We sell Wasabi storage with our Object Cloud, because we like the idea of having no egress fee, so that with a remote access workflow, you're always downloading. Everything you put up there, you can count on being downloaded several times. So with many cloud storages, that's going to cost you a lot more, and every given month you may see the bill go higher and higher. So with Wasabi, they make you retain the data for a certain amount of time after you upload it. They're going to charge you for, in our case, 30 days. We give you a 30-day charge on data that's been uploaded, but most people will be just fine with that, because they're doing this for backup purposes as well. And then during that time and after that time, there's no cost to download the data. So it's much better for some of the workflows that we work with. With Facilis Edge, it's multi-directional sync. So from the remote workstation to the facility and vice versa, you're always seeing the same data. linked to direct path. So if you're working on that cache volume locally in the facility as a fast volume for your project, that project is going to link to the same path, because that same path will exist on the desktop of the remote client. So there's no changing of paths, there's no relinking that's necessary. It's just all going to be there and link up, which is the major value in the Edge Sync to begin with. So sharing media, sharing projects. We're in beta right now with Edge Sync, and we're working through all of the different project sharing that we can accommodate in a collaborative environment, whether it be Avid and Adobe, Resolve. We're going to make sure all of those work to the extent they can, and then we're going to come out with a feature set and best practices to make sure that you can use all of those. Redundancy and offline access is an important part of this. People will say, well, I can just use a VPN. And in some cases, our customers have been great about setting these VPNs up and making VPNs work. The problem with a VPN is, well, there's many. Sometimes IT departments don't like them, and if they do give you one, they're not going to work on its performance. They're saying just be happy being able to be on the network and not necessarily be high speed. VPNs in general don't have any WAN acceleration, because you're on a local attached network drive as far as your home system is concerned, even though it's over the wide area network. So not a very good use of the bandwidth, not a very optimized use. And if the internal facility for some reason has a glitch or has a problem with upload speed or has to go dark for any reason, you lose everything. You don't have access to anything. So cloud gives you that sort of, it can upload on off hours, and then it's all there. And then no matter what the speed of the upload of the facility is, or whether the facility is even online, you can get access to that data, and it's a lot faster to download to your desktop from the cloud than in many cases it would be through a VPN. So there's some reason to do this. We'll support you either way, because we have a lot of customers using VPN as well. FastTracker integration is a part of this. FastTracker is sort of the dashboard of Object Cloud and Object LTO, and getting to be more for Edge Sync as well. So we can track cloud and LTO data, not only the fact that it's been moved to cloud and LTO, but also its location, its storage information, what the bucket name is, where that file lives, what the cartridge name is, and the barcode where that file lives. That's all incorporated into FastTracker, so you know exactly where the data is. And of course, it's verified to be copied and verified to be archived before we give it the archive stamp. Files and folder contents to cloud and LTO. So we can, through FastTracker, move files or copy files on a file level, on a folder level, through our desktop browse directly to cloud or LTO without having to go into the drive and find the folder and copy it yourself, drag and drop, or whatever other means. And the method by which we do copies and moves within FastTracker is set up ahead of time. As you may have seen last week on the FastTracker webinar, you set up those copies and moves ahead of time as an administrator, so you're always sure that it's going to be going to the right place, to the right folder with the right retention rules, going to the right bucket, or to the right LTO group of tapes. So that's something that the administrator sets up. It's not up to the user to sort of move things where they think they should go. Flushing and prefetching of files and folders, we're going to look at that a little bit. The ability to directly affect what's on the cache drive, what's present on disk, what's been flushed from disk, the ability to prefetch it or hydrate it back down from the cloud or from LTO directly into the cache volume, so it's now usable in the projects. That all can be done through FastTracker as well. And proxying to cloud, the ability to take a high bitrate media and proxy that to a cloud location means that you don't have to have 100 terabytes of cloud storage if you have 100 terabytes of in-facility storage. You can get away with 10 or 20 terabytes, if that, because FastTracker can make an H.264, 1080, even medium or high bitrate copy of your UHD media, and you can work with the old offline-online method and just conform back to that UHD when you're back in the facility or whenever the finishing stage happens. In some cases, you may not even have to. What's your delivery method? Is it going to web? Is it going to delivered to a 1080 anyway? So FastTracker can handle that for you and give you those links in the same directory structure for the proxy as you had for the source. So the applications easily link back and forth between proxy and source. We can get a little further into that with the FastTracker advanced workflows that we're going to be showing next week on Thursday. But just to sort of talk about how this all started, the integrated feature of Object Cloud and Object LTO started around archive. So we have LTO and Cloud existing in the same directory structure, in the same volume, which is the cache volume, and the cache volume is another volume that you can create through the standard volume management tools in Facilis Hub or TerraBlock if you have an older system. And those folders and files are there until they're flushed, and then the folders and file headers or stubs are there, and it looks as if you're still looking at those files or folders, but if you look at the attributes, you'll see they're an offline file. That's a specialized Windows thing to have something that's a sparse or a stub file that's offline even though it's sitting there looking at you. Automatic mirroring and backup can be achieved a couple different methods. We can use SyncBack Pro, which is our old favorite Windows tool that just sort of copies here to here and gives you a way to manage conflicts and overwrites and look at date mod times and things like that if you want to. We can use FS Mirror from Zendata, and we'll talk about the fact that Zendata is behind the Object Cloud and LTO and also the Edge Sync software. We're in partnership with Zendata, and then we're using their software on our systems to create these feature sets and incorporating those software components with our system and our FastTracker and our volume management. We use FS Mirror, which is their product, and that's a standard file system movement application that can automate movement between your project volumes and the cache. And then whatever happens on the cache, of course, as far as retention or upload or to LTO or whatever is all managed there. Drag and drop, archive and restore, I mentioned before, FastTracker integrations, those are all active whether you're using LTO or cloud. And of course, as you get into remote access and things like that, we'll talk about how best to use it in those ways. 8 to 48 slot LTO libraries directly on the Facilis server itself. This is through a SaaS connection. And so the Facilis server has now become your asset management database. It's become your LTO and cloud archive server, all in one, as well as, of course, the shared storage server that you're relying upon for all of your productions that you have in-house. And of course, replication, repacking, things that you can do with LTO libraries that have multiple tapes in them, real-time replication to LTO, one copy goes off-site, one copy stays on-site. We've done all kinds of different setups for LTO where a group of tapes is an archive group and one group of tapes is a backup group, and you can separate those within the software so that, you know, a folder called LTO backup is going to go to the backup set, and a folder called LTO archive will go to the archive set. And repacking, of course, from older LTO versions onto new LTO versions. If you have an older LTO software that uses LTFS, it's very easy for us to take all that information into our database, and now it's in Object Cloud or Object LTO, and it's in FastTracker as well. So things we can do there. Now, when we get to remote access is the next question up. You know, as people start to talk about, well, you have cloud, then how do I access that data once in the cloud? Not as big of a question last year as it is this year. So we can work directly with a virtual caching facility. I mentioned that before because it's important to know that, you know, you're not sort of working over here and everything's sort of going over there and then heading up to the cloud. You can be working on the same cache volume that is real time being uploaded to the cloud. And that's something that's, you know, if you're doing a collaborative project, it takes one step out. It takes that intermediary step out of having to move that stuff to the cloud after you've been working on it or daily or whatever it might be. Because once again, the cache volume that's in the front of this whole thing is a Facilis volume, the same as any other. Upload to cloud in real time is key. Now, real time being sort of as you're copying data to or as you're creating media onto your project folders, whether you're creating files, renders, flat files, ingesting media, voiceovers, whatever it might be, as soon as those files are written to the cache, they're immediately uploaded, so they're available externally. Cloud volume access on the remote desktop, a couple different ways we can do that, I'll get into that, and upload from remote workstations. So you can upload back from the remote workstations, and I'll show you a little version of that I have set up. Lots of moving parts here once I get to the demonstration stage, so hopefully I'll be able to remember where all those things are. Something to show you visually, you know, what we're talking about, especially in some of these workflows where you're using cloud as an intermediary. And so, of course, if you have any more questions on LTO, just throw them up there as well. I'm going to just concentrate a little bit more on cloud. I feel like that's where people are sort of at these days. So transcoding or proxying to cloud, you start with your editors who have, mounted the Facilis project volumes normally that they would for editorial in-house. And they're going to then use an encoder, it could be media encoder. In some cases, they'll be using FastTracker as well. But if you want to have something where you're ingesting into Premiere, for example, and you're setting up your ingest settings so that you're automatically encoding a proxy to a certain location, well, you can encode that proxy to the location of the cache drive. And that cache drive is then going to retain that. So you have a proxy in-house internally. It's not going to flush it from disk if you tell it not to. And it's going to make all that available through the cloud to your remote desktops. And so that proxy, being much smaller than what you're working with in the facility, is going to be a great way to lower space needed on the cloud. And that project that you're working on in the facility, because it can toggle back and forth between the proxy file and the online file, it will link directly to the proxy file in the remote locations. So ingesting the cloud is something else. So maybe there's nobody in the facility, and maybe all you're doing is the camera guy comes back and throws the camera cards in all alone in the facility, and he's just pumping everything over to the cache drive so that everyone who's on the cloud remotely can get access to that. So that's something where, well, depends how large those camera files are. If they're 50, 100 megabit, not that big a deal. If they're much larger than that, then you're going to have some time in upload and have some time in download. But the nice thing about this is that you can be doing that off hours. Some of the customers have come to us and said, well, if they know that something's been uploaded today and they need to work on it tomorrow, can they just set a prefetch for an overnight? Sure, you can go to your cloud volume on your desktop, and you can say, bring all this stuff down, copy it to your local drive if you want, depending on how you're using that remote instance of the cloud drive and that remote instance for a chance of the S3 bucket. You can have that happen over a long period of time. And then once you're come in the morning, and once you get up and on ready to work with the system, that's all ready to go, and you're all real time at that point. So lots of different ways to sort of skin that. Now we have ingesting remotely, and this is something where if there was a workflow that was discussed prior to the pandemic, this was sort of it. It's like, well, we have people in the field. And they're shooting constantly, and we have to wait for them to deliver the media to us. So is there a better way to do that? Yeah, sure. I mean, depending on how much it is. So depending on their upload speeds. I mean, it still might be quicker to throw a hard drive into FedEx, but this is going to be a lot more safe and redundant, and you're going to be able to, sort of like I mentioned, trickle the stuff up there and then, bring it down at your leisure and work with it. Because the object cloud volume, whether you're using Edge Sync, if you're using Edge Sync, it's going to automatically show up. If you're not using Edge Sync, you're just using the object cloud in general, just the cloud storage, and you have an instance mounted to your desktop, like I'll show you once we get to the demo, you can be uploading files, and then we can do what we call a catalog sync to the object cloud volume and import those folder structures, and that directory structure. So that will show up there, and then you can say, okay, I'm going to link to those files, and as you're linking to those files in the facility, it's bringing them down, it's downloading them from the cloud. Or once again, you can just have it prefetch and have that sort of all happen so it's ready for you to use. And so that operation can get you around having to move data back and forth, move tapes or hard drives back and forth from on-set or on location to the facility. And that kind of workflow is going to be a long-term workflow for many people, even after all this is done and people are back working in the same location. So on to Facilis Edge, because those sort of give you an idea about sort of the general workflows that can be accommodated. Facilis Edge sort of gives you all the nuts and bolts ready to do it. It's a turnkey method of enabling these workflows in a very automated way, in a very sort of background and turnkey way. So we start off with the facility, and the facility has their storage that is central to the facility. It's on the cloud. It's using object cloud node or object cloud instance. When you then sort of convert that to Edge Sync, well, now you get a second site. And that second site can be a PC, for example, that's at someone's house. And that PC simply loads the Object Cloud software, get an Edge Sync license, and they use an internal drive to be the cache because they're not on a Facilis system, so they have to have something for a cache drive. And then that cache drive gets populated with everything that's on the cloud that relates to the cache drive in the facility. And so you'll see all these stub files popping up in your local cache drive when you're on your system, and then you can decide what you need to restore, download, hydrate in order to work with it. And so that's sort of the if you just do nothing but say take an Object Cloud product, convert it to Edge Sync, that's kind of what you get. Now, on top of that, we can go a little further. We can add other site licenses so that you have another site that can use Edge Sync as well. Now, its instance may be sitting on what we call an Edge node. An Edge node hardware is a mini PC. Now, I mentioned before that we incorporate the Zendata software into the Facilis products because it's Windows-based. It uses a very Windows method of these stub files and sparse files to make all this happen. So because of that, and we're very happy to have that advantage because we're running on Windows as a server motherboard and operating system architecture. Even though we're not using Windows sharing per se, we're not NAS storage, but we're using Windows to run the motherboard and the software. So we get to use these advanced features. The problem is if you have a Mac at home. If you have a Mac at home and you want to just use the standard Object Cloud with the S3 instance on the desktop, you can do that. If you want to have a full Edge Sync experience where the linking is direct and everything is bi-directionally synchronized and everything is sort of perfect and looking like you're working in the facility, then we use the Edge node. The Edge node can be a mini PC that's your reseller can build for you if you're using an Adobe workflow or something that doesn't require specialized software. If you're using an Avid workflow, because we need to make it Avid emulated storage for you, because that is the only way you're going to see direct linking into the Avid Media Files folder and potentially project sharing as well, is if you have that Avid emulation, and that's called a Facilis turnkey Edge node. So that's a little bit further sort of in the premium section, but that's all possible. So you can be running at home, and the nice thing about this is you have this little mini PC that's running at home, wired into your router, and over Wi-Fi, you can be connecting to that and mounting the cache volume to your laptop and working as if you're in the facility on that same cache volume in the facility, because it's going to look the exact same. And it's going to be downloading and hydrating whatever files you need to work with in real time, or a prefetch method, and that's the workflow. So I can get a little bit more into that in terms of how the servers look, and I'll show you how a Mac client sees it as well once we get into the demonstration phase. But here's a little better visual on that. So I have facility storage, and this is, eventually I think what's going to happen, and I hope will happen, is that, in order to remain separated as needed, in order to not have, fully packed facilities, we'll have some people in the facility and some people remote. And if that's the case, then this method works out really well. Where in the facility, I have facility storage hooked up, and I have it available to all the workstations. I have an Edge site. Marcus is over there on his Edge site. It's a PC, so he goes directly, down with a software license. He can have a cache volume internal to his PC that looks the exact same as the cache volume in the facility. Then I have Aston, who's over on his Mac, and he has a mounted network drive from the Edge node, which is in essence the cache volume, and is in essence the cache volume is in the facility, synchronized. So this is the way you may see the physical connections happen. In each of the locations internally, you may find that you have folder structures, projects that are different depending on where you are. Now you're going to see all the same project folders because the folders and files will all be there, at least in stub or sparse file way. And so, for example, in the facility, you see the ingest folders there, the raw files folders there, and the proxy, because you're creating the proxies potentially in the facility for use in the remote location, and all the graphics are all there. There's Marcus and the Aston folder there as well. but you may not have that fully online because that's being passed to you from the editors remotely. Now on the Aston system, he sees the full proxy folder. He's constantly prefetching that because that's what he's working with in his projects. He only sees some of the graphics. He doesn't need the whole thing. And his Aston folder is completely online because he's populating that with whatever he's sending back to the facility. Same thing with Marcus. Marcus sees the folders that he needs to see, and they're fully hydrated. And the others, they're just sitting there as stub files. He doesn't need to see them. So just because you have those raw and ingest files in the folder doesn't mean that they're being downloaded constantly on these other workstations. So you may have gigabytes and gigabytes of stuff that are visible to the remote workers, but don't need to be accessed by the remote people. So that's an important part of this. Now you see that the Edge node is necessary in the case of the Avid, or in the case of that being a Mac running on FCPX, of course. If it's FCPX or Premiere on Mac or whatever it might be, the Edge node generic is okay to use. If it's an Avid, then the Facilis turnkey Edge node is the one to use because it's a little hub server. So it shares out the cache volume as if it were a virtual volume in a Facilis environment. So something to consider there. I want to get into, before we get too much further, I want to spend some time doing some demonstration as well, get into how FastTracker sort of works into all of this, because it's an important part of the system, because it gives you sort of an overview of what you have that's better than just looking at this directory structure sometimes. So first thing is the file movement and copy. I mentioned before that the administrators in charge of creating these file movement and file copy locations. And then the users, if they're given permission to write to that catalog, then they have the ability to move files or copy files to different locations. And that could be, for example, to the cloud. So if I have a bunch of media that I've brought in the facility and I choose selected media that I want to move to the external remote users, then I can just select those clips, do a move or a copy to the cloud, and they're gone. Now, when I do that copy or that move, I can choose, do you want to maintain the same directory structure? So all the same folder hierarchy will now exist on that cloud location as it existed in the internal facility location. Makes it really easy to link back and forth. If you get a project file back from a remote location, you can open it up here. It knows where to go look. Maybe you have to tell it to go look at the project volume instead of the cache volume if you're not using the cache volume directly. But it'll, from that point, be very easy for Adobe, for example, to go in and find all the media. Proxying to cloud, proxying to LTO. It's as simple as requesting a proxy on demand. So you request a proxy on demand, and it says, well, I have a proxy cloud option here, and that just means that it's going to give me a low or medium bitrate 1080 file from whatever you tell me to make it out of, and it's going to go to the cloud location. And normally proxy files always keep the same folder hierarchy as the source files. Once again, to enable that sort of linking back and forth between proxy and online to be that much easier. Archive location tracking. So every time I move something to the cloud, it shows up as another location on the record. So the record, you have one record and multiple files where that record file exists. So we don't have one file per record, which is why we don't need to have a billion records supported, because you can have 10 files per record. So we're tracking a billion files, but we're not tracking that many records. So this, for example, I see that the file started off on the Brandstar volume, but then it went to cloud. So I can see that it's there. And if I lose the Brandstar volume, Brandstar file for any reason, or if that Brandstar volume is blown away, all I need to do is make that cloud copy the primary. And then it will show me whether that file is offline or online on the cache. And if it's offline, I simply tell it to prefetch, download it, and it's there ready for me to go. So you can find the cloud or LTO version of the file simply by going to where it's been moved or where we've since indexed it. If it was a lost file, if it was someplace that we didn't expect to find it, but it's there. For example, that third one, which is the projects volume with the Brandstar folder, someone copied it there, and we just happened to, on our remote indexing, auto indexing, find the same file living in a different location, and we applied it to the same record. We know it's the exact same file because we use a binary hash of the file, so it can't be a different file. Even if it's a different name, we still know it's the same file. This is a folder prefetch from offline, and I'll show you this once we get to the demonstration. So if files come to the facility from a remote workstation and they're ingesting remotely, and I see the files showing up on my cache volume in the facility, they'll show up like this. They'll show up as offline files, perhaps with a pending proxy. Can't make the proxy because it's offline. So FastTracker knows the difference between offline and online files. One of the things we did to incorporate the ZenData Object Cloud with the FastTracker database. So what we'll do is we can just say prefetch, and by prefetching those files, even on a entire folder basis, it will bring down all the media for those files. The next time that we go and auto-index that location, we'll give you the head frame, and we will give you the proxy at the same time. So you'll have that fully populated with a head frame, a proxy, and we'll show that it's an online file for you to use and display. So Adobe Prefetch on import, this is a way to see offline files that have been sort of given to the facility from remote locations and synchronized to the facility from remote locations, but in an offline file way. But from the Adobe panel, I can simply drag that file to my timeline. It might take a little bit longer to import because it's downloading from the cloud, but that's all I need to do, and it will then show up in my timeline. I can start to work with it. In the Object Cloud software, I can tell it whether or not to retain files that have been read down from the cloud or from LTO for a number of days or a number of weeks or whatever you want. You figure if you're downloading to the cache, you're probably using it, so you may want to keep it around for a while. Or if the protocol for your editors is to, well, don't download it, move it to your work volume. Just drag it over to the work volume so that you're not using it directly from the cache, so we don't fill up the cache too much. Then you can say, well, as soon as it's read, just flush it because it was read for the purpose of someone to move it over to the work volume, and then you can just flush it from the cache volume. So this is what I'm going to try and demonstrate in the time we have left. Object Cloud, the server cache volume, what that looks like, some of the ZenData software and how we've incorporated that into FastTracker, how Mac gets remote access just in a very simple way, the FastTracker features of file movement to archive, proxy to cloud, fetch and flush. I won't sort of go through all of those, but I'll show you sort of how they exist and where they are. Facilis Edge, then multi-site updates, the Edge host, Edge site, Edge node, what those look like, and of course the ability for the Mac to mount the Edge file, the Edge cache volume to its desktop to use directly, as well as the Facilis turnkey sharing node and what that's all about, what that does. So let's get into that right now. I'll keep this to the side here so I have a version of this for notes. So the first thing we'll look at is on the server itself, what Object Cloud looks like. So I'll go to my server here. All right, so you see here that's that net limiter I use because Object Cloud is so fast at uploading. If you don't throttle it, it might take out your network and your ability to browse the web. It uses the entire pipe, especially in the way that ZenData does it, where it utilizes multiple connections to the cloud to upload. So it uploads extremely fast. So net limiter is a good way for me to throttle that upload so it doesn't take my phones out or my webinar out. So cloud volume here, you'll see on the X drive, that can either be, that's in the server, that's a direct attached drive. It basically looks like a mounted direct attached volume. You'll see here it shows up as 2.125 terabytes. That's because it's taking the size of the LTO. If you have a simple Object Cloud, it'll take the size of whatever your Object Cloud license is. If you do 10 terabyte license of Object Cloud, then that will show up as a 10 terabyte volume, even though it's not a 10 terabyte volume. If I look here at the cloud, it's actually only 500 gigs, or what we designate now as 500 gigs, 536, because we're counting in base 10 instead of base 1024, which is a long story. But that's a 500 gig volume. But it shows up here as over 2 terabytes because that's the size of the tape I have in the LTO drive. So the cloud volume, if I open this up, you'll see that it has lots of stuff. I can make as many folders as I want. I can have them all with the same retention rules, or I can have them as multiple different retention rules. So my LTO archive and LTO backup are here. And if I go over to my FastTracker, this is the ZenData tab of the FastTracker, and I'll see here I have two different rules. My LTO backup is going to flush immediately and it's never going to flush read files, because I figured if I'm taking something from the backup, I probably need to use it, and I'm probably going to use it in real time from the cache volume. Whereas from archive, it's going to flush immediately when I send it to LTO, but I'll give it 5 days, because if it's taken out of archive, it's probably not as important. I might not be using it at all. I may just be taking it back to try it, for whatever reason. So for whatever reason, you can have different retention rules for different things. The jobs 2020, since I'm constantly sort of populating this, and it's probably already in the system based in FastTracker, I'll say, well, immediately flush that from disk when it hits the cache volume. Whereas the jobs 2019, I might be taking that in from hard drives or things in the closet and populating the system in that way and sending it directly to tape. So I'm going to leave that for 2 hours. You see here, flush written files from disk 2 hours, so that way my jobs 2020 auto index from FastTracker can come in. It's doing it once an hour, so that FastTracker comes in and indexes that location on the cloud volume once an hour, so that it has time to make a thumbnail, make a proxy if you want, record that's there, and then it flushes from that cache location afterwards. So a couple different reasons I would sort of go and do that. So the FastTracker, this is the FastTracker server integration, where we have all of these file groups, but this is what it looks like within the Zen data. So file groups, you see them all here. Volume set here is LTO. I have two volume sets, LTO and Wasabi Cloud. Wasabi Cloud is just my generic Wasabi bucket that I'm using for this, and you'll see that what I'm seeing here on the cache volume is exactly what I'll see on the cloud when I show you the instance of the cloud on the desktop of the remote client. So with that, the Mac remote client is just a Mac Pro that's sitting out here on the interweb somewhere. This is local in the facility, but it's looking at the internet to get this information, because what I'm using is a product called Expand Drive, and this is called Facilis Cache on the desktop. And if I open this up, I'll see that I have this bucket, and the bucket is here. So this is the difference between Edge Sync. One of the major differences between Edge Sync and between any other instance that you have on the desktop is that you have to get into the bucket first, and then you see all the contents. So it's not the exact same path as you would have if you were using Edge Sync, because Edge Sync is the cache volume as it exists in the facility will also exist on the desktop of the remote client. So you see here, if I wanted to move things back and forth, it's a pretty simple process to do that. I can just go into, for example, my cloud volume here, which is mounted from the server that has the Object Cloud software. I'm mounting it to this client. You see it's a network drive here, and there's everything. So I'm going to go in here. I'll go into Online, Brandstar. I'm just going to grab some new files and bring them in there. So when I grab those new files and bring them in there, right now it's going to the server, it's uploading to the cloud. There's a bunch of text that's flowing up in the monitoring tools in the server. But as far as I'm concerned, on the remote location and looking at this instance here, which is the S3 bucket, I just need to maybe do a refresh here, and that's going to pop up. There they are. So there's my new files. So bunch of stuff here. I can see here that's the exact same thing that I have on the desktop here. If I open that up, and you can see that since I put them in this online location, it flushed them immediately, so it has X's next to them. So the icon actually shows an X, meaning that's an offline file. So that only exists right now in the cloud. So I may have done that just to send that data to the remote clients, not to use it here in the facility. But I can just take this whole new files and drag it over to the desktop. And yeah, it shouldn't take very long, and now I can open those up and use those as it comes up in our player at some point. There it goes. Okay, so you get the idea. Those are very short, so we can actually get that done quickly. So the instance of the cloud storage in the desktop of the Mac, you can play it directly from there. You can link to files on there. It does go a level down because you have to go into the bucket in order to see the files, so it's not going to be the exact same path. And Expand Drive actually has a way so you can cache things to a local hard drive when you sort of play something down. It downloads it. Since you're never really streaming from the cloud storage, it wants you to always cache, so it'll cache to a local drive as well. So a lot of our customers are using this method. They're either doing a download all at once of the data that they need for the day, or they're doing one at a time as they need. But that's your basic method of taking files from the main facility. If I have something like, here's my camera card, and I wanted to, sorry, my VNC is being there. So I have some media here as well. So I'm just going to grab this and bring it into the online, and there it is. That goes in there, and that's uploading to the cloud right now. And so from there, any other client who also sees this same instance on their desktops will also see that coming up in the same way that I was just able to refresh that and see it coming from the facility. They'll see it on their desktops as well. So that's a little bit about sort of how we get Mac desktop incorporated to just a simple object cloud, maybe 10 terabyte starter package that you can use. So the FastTracker features, I wanted to show you some of that. As I showed you before, we do have the idea of offline files, and I use this as my image in the slide to show you that. So sort of all of these were indexed from a location that was remote. So they put these surfing files up here, and if I decide I want to see those, all I need to do is either select them as a whole or go into my cloud volume, which is right here, into FastTracker test media, right mouse on that and say prefetch. And it'll ask me, do you want everything, this folder and all the folders beneath it? And I'll say yes, and it'll go and do that. So now what's happening is on the server, if I go to the system here, it's saying, yep, see S3FS restore. It's restoring all that stuff from the cloud. It's populating the cache volume, hydrating all those files for me. And so now if I want to go in and re-index that location, since it indexed it before as an offline file and it didn't restore it at that time because it doesn't want to be doing all these restores if you don't want the files. But now that I've prefetched it, if I go into do a auto index again. So for example, here's that same directory, FastTracker test media and demo media 2 in my cloud volume. Since these are all been brought down and these have all succeeded and populated, I'm going to wait to make sure those are all there first. If I run that, it's going to populate the head frames and the proxies for that. So now it gives me a way to, I shouldn't have done all of them, it's taking a while. But I'll go ahead and hit run now anyway. So it's going to go through an indexing. It says, yep, I'm accessing all that media. So once that's done, I come over here. At some point in the near future, it's going to come up and start showing me head frames. And it's going to come up and also start showing that it's going to go and do the proxies for me as well. Since the media is now there and FastTracker says, oh, the media is there, so I'm going to give you a head frame. I'm going to give you proxies for these. And so, you'll have what you need. And so that's I hit it a little too quick, but you get the idea. So that's now available for me to use. And if I go into my my Premiere as well, I'll go back to the Mac for this and show you that I can do this on the Adobe panel as well. So if I go into my Premiere 2020 here, and I go into my FastTracker panel, and I go to that same location. Let's say I go to Cloud, Demo Media 2. Let me just do a quick update there. There's my FastTracker media, and there it is. And so this is here now. I have a couple choices within. So these are now showing as they're not offline anymore. They're just not available to me because I can't mount that volume. But since they've been prefetched, I can do something else. I can download them if I want to. I can download them directly to the Mac here, or I can just simply get access to that cloud volume and then just bring it down normally. So let me just quick refresh here. So from there, I can actually still, if I have an offline file here, I can drag that directly into the timeline as well, and it'll prefetch it for me as I'm dragging to the timeline or importing to the project. But something I wanted to make sure I showed was the ability to not only prefetch and flush, but proxy directly to the cloud from the FastTracker interface. So if I have some media here, let me go back up to my BrandStar folder here. So this, I want to find something that's not too large. So this is, yeah, 460 meg. So this is a 460 megabyte file. It's not very long, but it's, you know, it's a high res file. So from here, I can say it has a preview, so I can always play down the preview here. I say, okay, that's what I want. I'm going to send that to the guys or the people external to the facility. I can go create proxy cloud. And so what this is going to do is it's going to encode, as you can see, it's encoding directly to the cloud volume into the proxy location. And what we'll see is cloud volume, proxy location, and brand star, 3 footage, pickup shots, such and such. It's going to give that exact same directory path, but in the cloud location, which is the cache volume, but it's going to the cloud. So now if I go back to the Mac, and I go to my proxy location, brand star, 3 footage, such and such, and there's the clip, and now I can just, you know, drag that out and maybe open it up. It's an MXF. It's probably going to try and launch Avid or something, so we'll ignore that. But you get the idea. The proxy into the cloud ends up with a lot smaller file. So I made it actually, it was an HD, but it was a low bit rate HD, so it ends up being 84 megs as opposed to 464 megs. So you can see how you can take the proxy into cloud and make a much smaller file so that you can utilize much less cloud space than you can, you know, if you were to copy all the files over en masse from the camera masters or the raw files. So those are all things that we can accommodate. I did want to show Facilis Edge in the time I have left, and you know, obviously these workflows get much more advanced, and we're going to show that coming up in 2 weeks with the Facilis Edge advanced workflows, and also the FastTracker advanced workflows coming up next Thursday. But I wanted to show you the Edge stuff right now because that's pretty interesting. So first thing I'll do is show you sort of the different server locations. So we call them servers. They're edge servers, edge hosts, or edge nodes. So this is a system that is a Facilis hub server. So this hub server, you know, it's if you look at the this is, you know, the admin, local admin. Sorry, this is the local admin for the hub server. So it has a bunch of stuff going on. It has this volume called. Let me just. Edge cache. And edge cache is the cache volume for the Facilis Edge multi-site sync, you know, synchronization. So that shows up here as 1,000 gigs, 1 terabyte. But if I go and look at the Edge volume here, it shows up as 10 terabytes because that's the license I have for cloud storage. It tells you, I don't care what the size of the physical volume is, here's how much space you have available on the cloud, and that's the size of the Edge cache volume. So you see here that I have, I'm in a media folder. I have my Edge node, Edge site, house. I have a file here. This is a Edge node. So this is basically a little Facilis server that is on the other side of the world, potentially, taking from the internet synchronization of that Edge cache volume. So what I can do is show you this is the admin for this system. It just got 1 volume, the Edge cache, and that's it. And the Edge cache is actually a local SSD on a little mini PC. That's all that's going on here. So it's sharing out this Edge cache volume, for example, to the Mac, which I'll show you in a minute. And the Edge cache volume that it's showing that it's sharing out is synchronized with the previous volume I showed you, which was in the facility. Now, thirdly, I have this Edge site volume. Edge site is just a PC somewhere. The Edge site is just an HP, you know, Z8 or something, and it's running Premiere, for example, and it has a little cache volume that's internal to the PC. That its volume is showing up here, and it is synchronized with the facility cache volume. So very simply, all I need to do is anytime I want to copy something in, this is a very simple way to do it, just drag and drop, or I can automate movement of entire project volumes into the cache, whatever you want. But for example, this new files folder here, just copy that directly into the media, and you'll see that these start to move. You see the text readouts here start to do. The uploads are happening, change feeds are happening, because all these 3 sites are looking at the same database. The database is telling it that something has changed. So go and look at the file system and check it out. So here I see that I had this new files folder that just showed up in Oregon, and I have this new files folder that just showed up in, the UK. And if I open this up, I'll see that there's a bunch of files that have with X's on them. So the difference is that the files here don't have X's on them. The files here, well, sometimes they don't show X's depending on the attributes you have set. But these X files are good indicators that these are stub files. These are not files that are hydrated on this system. So for example, if I go to my this Edge node here is sharing out to a Mac, and I'll go to that same Mac I was on before, Mac Pro 2019, and I will look at the Edge cache volume. So here's the Edge cache volume that was being shared out from that mini PC that only had the Edge cache volume, but it's sharing it out as a Facilis volume, because if I go here and do a get info on that, you'll see that it shows up here as an AvidFS, so it's full Avid emulation for media sharing within Avid projects. But it's an internet-based synchronized volume, and you'll see here if I go to media and I go to, oh, there it is. Sometimes it takes a second to update. New files, I can grab one of those. It's going to hydrate. So that's going to take that file. It takes a minute. Download it from the web. It was a stub file, sparse file, and now that's ready to go. And that's available for me to use in any application. And like I said, I'll get much more into sort of how this looks in terms of shared media and shared projects within the applications. But this is a good indication of how we can share media across wide area networks through synchronization and cloud intermediary. And the most important part of this is that once you upload it to the cloud, it's redundant. It's out there and it's available even if the facility has an issue where it has to come off the internet for any reason. So some of our customers have set themselves up where they've put the cache volume into the facility, uploaded several projects worth of stuff, and then they've all gone home. Everyone works remotely off of what's been uploaded to the cloud, and in some cases they've even shut down the main facility server because they're all just going back and forth with the cloud data. So that's fine. We expect that there's going to be more facility and remote access happening in the future as well, but you get the idea that either of those methods are available. And so, I hope you can understand sort of what we're going for here with Edge Sync as an addition to the Object Cloud feature set, and as a way to really incorporate cloud intermediary in a way that hasn't been done before. And hopefully we can do that in a way that's compatible with a lot of different workflows, a lot of different applications, and a lot of different ways to produce media. So we only have a couple minutes left. I wanted to make sure that anyone who had a question was able to show it in the questions area. We have a questions field that you can type into. So please go ahead and do that if you have any questions, and I can try and answer them right now. Of course, the nice thing about this is you'll get a link for this video after it's complete, along with the other videos that we've had in the past couple of weeks. And if you register for future videos going into next week, you'll get links for all those as well. So feel free to do that, and we'll keep these coming so you can have all the information you need when talking to your people or if you're a reseller talking to your customers about how this all works. So are there any questions that anyone has right now? You can use the chat or you can use the question area. Also in the handouts, you'll find that there's the Object Cloud Edge Sync brochure. So check that out. And it gives you just a little portable information on what we've talked about. Not quite in depth, but like I said, more in depth is coming in the next couple of weeks as we really nail down these different workflows. Thank you, Michael. Michael's just looking for line item costs and things like that. We can definitely talk to you about that offline with your reseller. As I mentioned, the Object Cloud is not a big ask when it comes to cost, especially the value that it gives you. And if you can work within a small amount of cloud storage by using proxies, you can get a lot done in a small amount of cloud storage. And so we should definitely talk about the best way to make that most efficient and most affordable for a lot of facilities. Anybody else with questions? If not, I will say goodbye. And anything else that comes up, I am Jim@facilis.com. Please feel free to drop me a line. Thank you so much. Once again, register for more of the webinars coming up in the next couple of weeks. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care.